Ladies and gentlemen of the old world, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to the showdown between Kislev and the Greenskins here on the Imperial Road. It's going to be myself with Mother of Stanky facing off against Outer Region, who's going to be using Azag, which I quite like in this matchup. He's a little bit vulnerable to being sniped by little Groms and some of the Kislev shooting, but if he can survive, Lore of Death is very good against Kislev. He also is a good armor-piercing character, so if he can catch like Mother of Stanky out or any of their patriarchs on their own, he can really take them down. I like the utility he brings to the table. Of course, it requires a lot of micro, but Outer Region is a very, very high-level player, so certainly will be able to handle it. Now, my build, we're taking it back to the launch of Warhammer 3, which was certainly dark times in many ways, but heavy war sleds were the kings. Now, these things, I think, have gone through some changes, but their high armor will make them resilient against, the Error Boy fire. On top of that, they will just wreck the infantry, right? A little bit nervous about running into Boar Boys and some of the Mangler Squig type units. Mangler Squigs are actually, I think, okay in this matchup for sure, even after their nerfs, but we're going to see how they do. We got Kislevite warriors in the back. Mother of Stanky going to be rocking some hag magic. So we do have the Forbidden Fens, which is a slow and vigor reduction, which isn't terrible. We do also have the Cursed Cauldron. So this is like a big explosion. I haven't messed with it too much, but now's the time to try it. And last but not least, it's going to be the Malediction of Madness, which is a rampage ability. So maybe we'll have the opportunity to rampage some stuff, and most likely I'll probably forget about it. So let's get this game started. Let's have some fun, do some fast forwarding while the two armies posture up. Outer Region's army, pretty standard stuff. He's got Orc Boys into the sunset with a couple Orc Boy spears on the periphery to deal with Cav. Archers all over the place, and a single bolt thrower in the back guarded by Rusty Errors. Not Rusty Errors, Nasty Skulkers. I really like this because it makes me think that his artillery piece is undefended, so the Nasty Skulkers can then jump whatever Cav unit attacks it. They can smoke bomb them and get good value. I love this. And two Goblin Big Bosses, which of course only have one Squig summon now, so probably a fine unit at this point, which is great. So the changes to the Greenskins have been good. They feel pretty balanced, I would say. I think that the Ogre Kingdoms are a bit of a problem with Pigback Riders as well. Khorne has some stuff that's a little bit dodgy, but of course they're not like unbeatable, so it is what it is. Heavy war sleds are moving in and a grooving in, and Mother of Stanky are going to be doing some work, and now we get Stone Trolls being called out. So the heavy war sleds are going to be charged on in. So here they come for Urson, and they get a big old flattening charge into the Orc Boys, and you can see a lot of damage going in as now we're going to be Tokyo drifting across. And there is the Spirit Leech from Azag on Mother of Stanky, so she's going to be eating it like a champ as she does drop a nice bombardment there, but it does miss, sadly. It looked nice on the approach. I had ambitions for it, but alas, it did fail. Now, heavy war sleds seem to get caught up very badly in Orc Boys. I used to be able to pull out pretty easy through those guys, and now we're going to be using the Cursed Cauldron, I believe. Looks like maybe I canceled the cast by trying to cast something else, but we will keep our eye open for the Cursed Cauldron here. In the backfield, calling in some Streltsy to put pressure on the Stone Trolls, which will be quite good against those, as the heavy war sleds do get pounded pretty badly. So I was very bummed about that. That was certainly not a great start. The Forbidden Fen's going to be activated now. Now that you see the stat changes reflected with Vigor, I think it's going to be very cool to see kind of Vigor reduction spells in action. So we do start to tank the Vigor of those units using the Forbidden Fens. You can see the big nasty swamp does appear there. I actually think that spell is kind of underrated. A big AoE slow, lowers Vigor, which is basically like potentially a permanent stat debuff, right, on certain units. You can see these ones are winded. Looking at their speed, it's lowered, and also their melee attack is going to be lowered by 1 because they're winded. The Streltsy going to be moving up, and thankfully Kislev does have some healing. So we do use the Goulash back here, and it does a little bit of healing. It's not amazing, but it's certainly better than nothing, so we're going to be enjoying the benefit of that. And I do fall into his trap here. So the Dervishes, we unfortunately see the Nasty Skulkers. I do avoid a Smoke Bomb, and then I dive in, and we are going to get on top of the Bolt Thrower. So at the end of the day, if I can trade a Dervish for a Bolt Thrower, that's a pretty big win for us. Now, these Dervishes are going to be sacrificed for sure. They're definitely not going to live. But if I can get this offline, take the pressure off Mother of Stanky and my war sleds, probably going to be worth it. Now, things a little bit dodgy here. Shooting fire into the Kislevite warriors is very, very good. And I was expecting like a million squigs, so I didn't bring an armored front line. I was like, they're just going to get wrecked. But the archer play is actually countering my warriors pretty effectively. So that certainly hurts, and I figure at this point, let's just get them into combat and get what we can out of them. And now the Cursed Cauldron is going to get dropped. So let's see what kind of damage this gets. It does get dropped in these guys, and then it has like this afterburner effect. So let's see what it actually does. Oh, it shoots out these like cauldron blasts. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, doesn't seem that great for the Winds of Magic that I paid for it. Like, if you were to use any comparable 18 Winds of Magic spell, it basically would auto-KO this Orc Boy unit, but it is actually splashing over and getting that other unit, so maybe making me eat my words a little bit. That didn't, okay. It actually lasts a long time. Still on the fence, but, it'd be interesting to see what folks have to say about that. Mangler Squigs called in. I like the pick. I think in this matchup, Mangler Squigs are pretty good. If they can avoid the Halberd units and get into anything else in the roster, they'll be good against the War Sleds. They'll be very, very good against anything that's elite. And you can see they're going to be ripping apart the Warriors. I love that we can see them being used and they're not like OP anymore. Look at that. Oh, that's so cool. Look at the Mangler Squigs. They're still tossing things around, man. The flavor just oozing out of those guys. Now, pulling back, you know, I'm on the retreat right now. 1900 value against 3.7. The Greenskins have been pretty brutal out of the gates. We do get Azag a little bit beat up here, as the heavy war sleds are going to be retreating. And in response to that, I will be calling it a Patriarch, because my sleds need some fat healing, and healing is how I'm going to get back in this game. So I do a charge here. It's very limp. And it pulling away right now, because the Orc Boys, of course, are, you know, they didn't take much damage from that charge. They kind of, like, blunted the charge somehow, and there's armored trolls and spears nearby, so that feels pretty bad. And the Mangler Squigs are after me. They're on the hunt. Night Goblin Big Bosses are also pressing into the secondary, so the poor Streltsy, this is a nightmare situation for them. Squig Summon on top of them, and also the bosses. And the Mangler Squigs, anti-infantry, armor piercing, they're going to be able to rip them up. Mangler Squigs hitting at about 200 value so far, but I can assure you there's going to be much more to come. Faded Buna activated on the Griffin Legion, and we're going to be using the Cursed Cauldron once again, so I don't think it quite snares in place like some other vortexes do, like Pit of Shades, for example, does snare things, although it looks like there's a little bit of snarage going on, but overall, the damage, not super exciting, I don't think. I think Ice Maiden's Kiss would probably be just better against Greenskins to just clear out these chaff-based units, and some of the Stone Trolls do engage against my Halberds, which have flanked him here. And we do have Warriors and Dervishes coming in to try and support. And we're starting to kind of get back on value a little bit, but for sure my opponent is ahead. But Kislev does have insane healing, so you can be down in situations like this, and you can come back 100%. So Griffin Legion does charge in. Now, we charge into Mangler Squigs, and I thought Mangler Squigs got 40 armor. I'm going to run in and bunker bust these guys, but let's watch this fight for a second. Now, Mangler Squigs will do decent damage in sustained combat, for sure. Even after the nerfs, I think that it's not bad at all, but the big thing is when they explode. So if they're able to get some explosions in the Griffin Legion, it's going to be quite scary. So I respond by using the Goulash here to try and heal up these Griffin Legion, give them a little bit of staying power. And now we're going to be calling in the heavy war sleds to try and break this position. I'm like, we need to get these little hobos out of my backfield, try and deal with the Mangler Squigs, but instead we try and snipe Azag. So yeah, Azag does overextend a little bit. If he were to forget about it, I might get some milk out of that. Moving in our Kossar Spears, value 4.5 against 6.3. With healing factored in, he's probably up by about 700 or 800 value, I would say, maybe 1,000, somewhere in that ballpark. Mangler Squigs feasting pretty hard. Currently, they're sitting at 900 value. So the Mangler Squigs have paid for themselves. I've seen a lot of doom and gloom about Mangler Squigs, but I think they're going to be potentially good in some matchups, but not just like an auto-include, just insta-kill unit, right? Because this is value city for him. He moves the Mangler Squig in with 3 or 4 models on Death's Bed against Spears. That's like a dream situation, because when I kill them with my Spears, which will inevitably happen at some point during this game, if not from this unit, they're going to explode and do a lot of damage. The bosses were also causing me a lot of grief, so I grabbed my Patriarch as well as Mother of Stanky, and we're going to be using the Things in the Woods in the front of the sled, of course, to slap up these little goblins. So if we can get a break on those bosses, that's going to be a very nice one for us. Mangler Squigs, have they exploded yet? We see them sitting at 1,000 value, so they have exceeded their value so far. Meanwhile, the heavy war sleds still rotating about, shooting where they can. We do have 3 heavy war sleds here, 3 here, 3, 4, and 4. So the numbers are pretty good. We do get a little bit of bow fire going in as another Mangler Squig is called in, and no explosions here, but the Squig summons do last for a long time. I don't know what the deal with that is. It's kind of weird. The regular Squig summons last way longer than most other summons, at least as far as I've noticed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe CA changed the way that summons are. Like, it used to be that they have like one lifespan, then they have another lifespan within the timer, but maybe they just consolidated it into one. I'm gonna have to check into that. Halberd Warriors moving in, though, a little bit desperate. You know, I'm just getting ready to gather my forces. 6,000 against 7.5, though, is actually pretty good for us. And the Mangler Squigs do blow up and do a little bit of damage against the sleds, but also do wreck the Kossar Spears. So I'm going to be curious to see the Mangler Squig value after all is said and done. Mother of Stanky going to be moving in and trying to get my Kossar archers in range of the Mangler Squigs here. But the Stank train moving in, and it is a good chariot. She can definitely do some decent damage on impact. But with only 40 armor, she's not the type of character that you want to be leaving in sustained combat. Mangler Squig's going to be called forth and will be sent in with the Orc Boys. That's going to be a painful one. There will be some explosions. Let's get those sweet cinematic shots. Oh, yeah, look at the Mangler Squigs hopping about. And the spinning attacks are so good. Yeah, whoever animated those deserves a raise, because that is really, really good. Yeah, and the Warriors are getting pounded by them. Pretty good. The sled's moving in, and they're going to be battling with our new reinforcements. So this is where we have an opportunity to turn the game around. I called in a Frostworm, which arguably should have had one a little bit earlier, but the Frostworm is going to be excellent at getting terror routes and just bunker busting things. Azag is a little bit too beat up to get involved in this combat. Heavy war sleds should definitely be in guard mode shooting at Azag right now, but you can see my inexperience with Kislev kind of showing here that this is just a juicy opportunity to chunk a lot of HP off him. Now, my opponent going for a back objective snipe, which is good, largely because the Goblin Big Boss, even though he's like on death's bed, he still has 3 capture weight, so SEs don't lose their capture weight as they lose HP. I don't think that'll be something that even ever gets factored in. Probably doesn't even need to happen, but that's really nice. So moving up Dervishes as well as Halberds to try and stop that. And we do just wreck the Greenskins in the middle. So I was like, okay, suddenly we might actually be back in this game. We break them for the middle. The Frostworm and the Patriarch are getting fat heals, and now we're 8.1 against 8.1 against 8.9. So we're basically caught up in value. With healing factored in, I'm actually probably ahead, and we do get another Cursed Cauldron going down here, which is going to be slapping up these Orc Air Boys. And this is now where it's going to become a bit of a dodgy situation. I have to make hard decisions here. Do I go for his back entrenched position where he's got Skulkers and Spears? Bolt Thrower still shooting away. He seems to have summoned in another Bolt Thrower. I don't think that's the same one because we did do damage to the other one before. But Mother of Stanky and the Heavy War Sleds do break open the position. And now we're going to be hustling for the back point here as he calls it another Mangler Squig. I love it. So the Mangler Squigs have a weird bug right now, by the way. I don't know what it is, but when you resummon Mangler Squigs, so I kind of saw the banner, thankfully, but this could actually be a problem. There's a bug with Mangler Squigs that when you resummon them, after, if you resummon them out of reserves in domination mode, they're invisible. So hopefully that's something they'll fix eventually. It's not like game breaking because you can see the banner. So it's like, most of the neckbeards that play competitive are just sitting in outer space and just like don't even look at the creatures fighting on the ground, So with the debug camera. So it's not a huge deal, right? But it still is a little bit haggard, and in some situations could be problematic. But we end up fighting here, but the Mangler Squigs are still really good armor-piercing fighters with high melee attacks. So they're holding my Heavy War Sleds in check. I do use the Goulash, and I'm trying my best to break through those. We have the middle in check here. The Cossars of Spear is going to be holding it, but the back objective has been a bit of a disaster. The Squig Herds, the Boar Boys, Goblin Boss, and Azag have been very disruptive. Dervishes trying to fight Squigs, but struggling, and more Halberds are going to be sent over there to try and hold that with more Dervishes. So I'm, running a little bit tight on time here, and I start to realize this back objective fight is not going to go in my favor. Even though the Heavy War Sleds have been absolute chads this game, and probably each have gotten over 1,000 value, he's got Spears back here. He's got Spears, he's got the Mangler Squigs. I'd use the Forbidden Fens to try and slow things down and just kind of control the situation. Mangler Squigs here, 2,300 value. Damn, dude, fat damage. Really able to wreck through those Heavy War Sleds. So pulling on back are the sleds and the Patriarch. We're falling back in good order as we do in tabletop, because I notice I'm starting to lose the middle. I need to at least hold on to this and then get objective 3, and then maybe hope I can have a final hoorah on the home point, which is going to be possible with Terror on the table. It's something that can work. So the Frostworm does get back here. It slaps the base. I get a double cap, but we're in a situation where I need all 3 objectives. So that puts me on the back foot. 10.4 value against 10.8. Very, very good close game right now. As the Halberds and the Frostworm move up, we do see the boss and the Squigs peeling out. More Halberds are going to be cruising in for a bruising. Mother of Stanky is back in the middle, but she's pretty vulnerable right now. Azag, of course, is a vastly superior fighter in duelist combat, and I don't have a ton of support like right next to her. The Frostworm is going to be on its way over, but a big momentum push from the high ground as 2 Squig Herds and the Boar Boys are going to be collapsing in. The Cossars of Spears in guard mode, trying to rip some shots into Azag here. Forbidden Fens activated, slowing and trying to lower the vigor. So the Mangler Squig's going to be taking a big stat debuff because they're exhausted. So look at that, negative 13. So I think some vigor strategies, like just spamming that spell with Mother of Stanky and triggering the leadership penalty with another cheap spell instead of casting the big cauldron, could be pretty good. Like a vigor punishment strategy seems like it could be, yeah, I think very viable, right? Because it's like, you have the debuff spells that will debuff them for a key fight, but this debuffs them permanently if you can get them really tired. So kind of an interesting one. But Azag does go in for the kill on Mother of Stanky and starts to get some really cost-effective damage. Stanky calls the boys in with their spears, so the Kislevites going to be rushing in with their spears to try and fight off the Boar Boy Cav. Patriarch is nearby, but there's no more heals on the table. Heavy War Sled's getting a little bit tattered, trying to break this position, and the Frostworm thankfully was able to blunt the flank charge. We are holding on to the middle objective here, so objective 2 is under our control, but obviously out of region, a very seasoned player is going to be just mass supporting objective 1, because he knows he can win on 1 point here, so that's obviously going to be the play, right? So Stanky going to be dropping the Forbidden Fen to the Goulash. So the Goulash is going to get popped. That will heal up the vigor of the Kislevites and also provide a little bit of healing. The healing is kind of insignificant, but overall it's not useless, I suppose. Unbreakable Goblins, I do like that play. Sending in the Unbreakable capture weight to the middle objective in a very clutch, close fight, I think is a very, very big play. We are at 11.9 against 13, about 12 against 13. But even with healing, I mean, with healing we're ahead for sure, I would say. We've gotten 2 or 3, I think, max Patriarch heals on like Sleds and Stanky, plus the Goulashes. We've got to be ahead at this point. I mean, the Greenskin army is looking a little bit raggedy. On the back point, however, a little bit messy. The Goblin Big Bosses have been really annoying capture weight, even though they haven't gotten a ton of value. I mean, 167 plus a Squig summon, so probably just about paid for itself, honestly. These guys have just been like stealth capture weight, and every time I look over here, I assume that that is just this one unit, so I react that way. So having the stealth capture weight there is very troll. But in the middle, Mother of Stanky does get picked off, so she actually gets killed by Azag. But Azag, in response, is going to be facing the vengeance of the Kislevites here, as the Kosovite Dervish is going to be battling it out with Azag. And he's very squishy. He's got incredibly low melee defense, even with his various... yeah, this doesn't give the defense here, but yeah, he's in the 20s, so he takes a big beating from these units. And plus, when he's exhausted, his armor is going to be lowered down, and that's where he starts to take more damage. The Frost Beast here does manage to clear off most of the significant threats as the Warriors and Error Boys are pushed back. On the back objective, a little bit dodgy, but we are going to be stabilizing it. But, like, here's the thing, guys. Even though, like, oh yeah, sure, we clear this off, it's great for us, it's not, because we have to commit a huge amount of our resources back here to stop very little of his resources, which means that we don't have that Griffin Legion riding down here to try and threaten the back objective capture. So overall, that's little plays like that are very, very good. So we got 1 minute left, ladies and gentlemen, and Azag is running away, 700 HP. If we can get a break on him and he runs off the battlefield, that'd be pretty massive. Griffin Legion able to clean up the back cap here, and thankfully for our sake, we do shatter his Orc Boys, and also, I think, get a shatter on the Night Goblin boss. Dervish is going to be on their way down. The Dragon battling it out versus the last of the Night Goblins, but we're going to need its terror route on the back point here, so we'll do a little bit of fast forwarding as the Kislevites hustle, hustle, hustle for the back point. We do get the halberds in. By Our Blood is activated, so they're going to be fighting a little bit longer. Dervishes and Griffin Legion are here. He has a lot of capture weight, though, between the Squigs and the Trolls and just everything here. I think there's some Orc Boys over here, too. It's going to be a tough crack. So we're moving in, and we're not going to have time for much else. I believe we just call in Warriors. So I called in Warriors because that was the only thing I really had to call in, just in case, you know, I managed to get the back point. I'm going to need something to hold the counterpunch on Objective 2. So we do move in here. Azag very low. We're trying our best, ladies and gentlemen, but it's going to be tough to get through this position. When the Frostworm gets here, the terror route is going to be on the table. So here comes the Frostworm. Greenskins are folding. With another 30 seconds, there's a heavy, heavy chance we capture this and win the game. But with only 5 seconds left, we get the couple terror routes, but it's too little too late. The Beast did not get here quick enough. So GG, well played. That was a really fun, really back and forth match. Like, it looked like an extremely one-sided match in the beginning, but then Kislev's healing and tenacity really shone through. But the sleds were good. I like the sled style. I think my magic use was a little bit ineffective. Granted, she did pay for herself. Probably cut the cauldrons, maybe even just go with Katarine on her sled. I think Katarine would be better and more durable and would be able to be, the magic would just be stronger. But I do like the heavy sleds. The Kislev Warriors were fine. I thought they did their job. I mean, they actually all paid for themselves just about, or came close to it. We needed the Frostworm out sooner. The Frostworm was like what really broke their back in the middle when we got the terror route out. It was just brutal. So getting the Frostworm with the heavy war sleds together, I think, is the recipe for success. That first engagement, you know, he calls out trolls, right? I move in with the heavy war sleds. Then I send in the dragon to counterpunch the trolls. I keep the sleds there, shooting and supporting. I think his army mass terror routes, and I just probably am able to win that middle fight. Easier said than done for sure. I just felt like it would have gone maybe in that direction. Also, I think mixing in a little Grom would have been very nice. Like, cut the Griffin Legion, get a little Grom. That way I could just sit back and shoot the trolls and kill them. I could maybe have finished off Azag earlier. Lots of little fine-tuning, but that's what's so fun about Total War competitive. There's so many builds that could work. Like, this build is one way to do it, but, like, there's, like, probably 5 other viable Kislev builds you could do into Greenskins. And as far as Greenskins go, I think they're probably my favorite of the Omens of Destruction, because they seem, now after the minor changes they've got, they seem fair, they seem balanced. The new units are fun. Like, the Goblin Big Bosses are fine now. The Black Orcs with shields are awesome. The Bolt Throwers are cool. Mangler Squigs, I mean, hey man, our Mangler Squig's really bad. 3,000 value on this one, and this one unfortunately got shut down earlier. But yeah, 3,000 on this Mangler Squig is pretty freaking sweet. So yeah, love to see it, man. Loving the Greenskins here. Yeah, Khorne and Ogres are probably the most problematic. Pigback Riders are a really busted unit, I think. They screw up a lot of matchups. Khorne is problematic with the Khorne Gores. I think that they really skewed. And pretty much any faction that relied on heavy cav to stop Khorne is really struggling against them now. But I think that's something maybe in time people will solve and figure out. So I'm curious to see how the meta shapes. But yeah, for sure, those factions are quite scary. All right, guys, GG, well played. See you around. And that is it for tonight.